All right, joining me right now, Bryan Hulbert. Bryan, what do we call you? Are you just series announcer for the Luxo ASCS Chili Bowl? I mean, do you have some other like bigger, longer title that maybe we don't know about?
Uh, Officially publicist, but
Okay.
I announce, but I also do the PR side of it. I do the marketing side of it, the ad design. So it's kind of pretty much whatever they want me to do. Even been known to go out and chop trees down after a storm. So it just it's whatever they. I try to fill in wherever.
So, I mean, are you like a full-time employee? Are you contract? Like, I mean, how does that work for you with all of the things that you do?
I'm actually full time with ASCS, which is actually EFH Company, is the parent name of it. And through that, that also entails the Chili Bowl, the shootout. So I'm at the office full time, obviously, when I'm not on the road with the American Sprint Car Series. And, we kind of work all year long to just get ready for about a month out of the year, is what it feels like. Because with the shootout and Chili Bowl, I feel like we put in more hours and more work within those two events than we do the entire season of traveling.
Do you, as the ASCS, do you guys have the best beards in dirt racing? Because I feel like you and Matt Ward have just like really epic beards. I feel like Matt Ward's one of those guys that like keeps his wallet in there. Like it's crazy the nice beards that are going on with your series.
Well, I've never heard any chirping, but we never rule out any wildlife. But it's I don't know about him, but my whole deal is I hate shaving, so it's easier just to keep a beard. And if you look at a picture of my father when he was the same age as me, it's terrifying how similar we look. So he never shaved, and I just when I got old enough to shave, it was just a pain in the butt. I didn't like it, so here we are.
Kind of going back to the beginning, does a young Bryan Hulbert dream of one day being a dirt racing announcer? Or like, what does that kind of journey into that look like?
When I was younger, like every other kid, I wanted to race. I wanted to be in a race car. And I made a promise to my mom a long time ago that I would not do that. And in turn, also made the promise to my dad. The deal with my dad was if you're going to be in a race car, well, I hope somebody else is paying for it because it wasn't going to be one of his. And not that he was being mean, but we really couldn't afford to put me in a race car, especially when I had two other brothers and two sisters. So they raced hobby stocks for a while, but that they were they were better as mechanics, and that's not taken away from my brothers. They very talented drivers, but my brother Tony is a tinker mechanic, we call him, and that's what he does for a living. Is he's a mechanic by trade. So he was the fuel guy, he was the engine guy, and then my other brother he was the shock guy, he was the tire guy, and of course my dad was the crew chief. And when I realized I wasn't going to be able to be on track, I started looking at other avenues, and I always really enjoyed listening to the announcer at the track I grew up at in Las Cruces. His name is Alan Moore, and he was one of those guys that can make flies bumping into a window sound exciting. He was just so fun to listen to, and I really, really enjoyed Alan and got to know him. And kind of a little background on him, Alan had polio as a kid. So he did not have the use of his legs, but he had an incredible rate. I say had, he's not past tense, he is still around. He has an incredible radio voice, and that's actually what he does today is he works in radio. But I listened to him growing up, and it was always just amazing. Like he commanded everybody. If he said stand, you stood. If he said sit, you sat. And, he was exciting. He could make any race just sound like it was the most incredible thing you ever saw. And I thought that was just really, really neat how you could convey that kind of excitement and be basically have the best seat in the house. And as I got older, I would, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and I would imitate. And when I got old enough, I was working in the pits and scraping mud, mountain tires, and helping my brothers and helping my dad. One night, the track manager, this was in 2006, her name is Holly Jones, and her father Royal and his business partner Jimmy Ray are the ones that had Southern New Mexico Speedway. She was trying to pit report and be the manager and run the front and do this and do that. And I jokingly said to her one night when she couldn't get a hold of the announcer up top because it was kind of a chaotic night. I said, oh, hell, give me the mic. Well, she took me seriously. And the next weekend, she actually had me come in. It was El Paso Speedway Park was their other racetrack. And that's where I started as a trackside reporter. And, did our big modified shows. And for about half of 2007, that's what I did, is I was the trackside guy. And if you think I'm loud now, you should have heard me then. I could have made WWE, sound quiet. But about midway through the season, the announcer at the time, his name is Henry Gary, he quit. And so I took over. My first night as an announcer in Las Cruces was 7707. So I took over then and, announced there all the way through 2011. And in 2000, kind of backing up a little bit, in 2010, the national tour came through at the end of the season on their way out to Arizona. And that's where I met Scott and Scotty and Donna and Tommy and Lonnie at the time. And I was calling the modified race. Justin Zock came down and he was calling the sprint cars. And probably if it hadn't been for Johnny and Stormy Scott and another driver named Tommy Meyer Jr., just putting on a heck of a show, I don't know if they ever would have looked twice at me. And when I came back after the first night, Scott looked up, caught up with me, and he went, so you ever thought about doing this for a living? And I'm going, yeah, right. I'm nobody from nowhere in Podunk, New Mexico. I mean, you're crazy asking me that. But in the back of my head, I'm going, oh yeah, it's the greatest dream ever is to get paid to go to the races. And he goes, you need to turn in a resume. And I'm like, come on, man, I'm a dumb kid just out of college. What are you talking about? And then Donna came up later and she asked me the same question. I was like, oh, okay, I need to take this a little more seriously. So I turned in a resume and actually started part-time in 2011. And my first national tour race was out in California at Tulare. So I did Tulare and Hanford out there, and then came back and did 2 nights at Tucson and finished the season in southern New Mexico and West Texas, and went down or back up. I went out and did a show for Scott Trailer in Kansas City at Grain Valley. After that, I did a 3-night show at Lone Star Speedway, and then we had the Devil's Bowl after that. And at the Devil's Bowl in 2011 for the Winter Nationals is where I got hired full time, and started 2012 just going. And I've been, here ever since. And it's one of those deals, even when I'm having a bad day, or it just seems like it's been a terrible night of racing or anything else, it's kind of like the old joke, a bad day fishing is better than the best day at work. Well, a bad day being on the road, basically getting to do what was my hobby and always was kind of a dream of mine, but getting paid to do it. I'll take this over a desk job any day. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of time and research and work that goes into actually doing this. The announcings, that's the fun part. And, I've even heard Johnny Gibson say that, where that's the fun part. It's everything else leading up to it. That's the actual work.
When you kind of think back over your rise kind of to where you are today, and you talk about Johnny Gibson there, and you look at guys like Tony Bachhoven or James Essex, or any number of guys across the dirt racing landscape, I think everybody has like a really kind of distinct style. And is that something you think about when you're announcing, or is that something that just kind of comes naturally to you as an announcer, like what exactly your style is and how you're going to call a race and things like that?
I think it comes to you over time. I know mine did, because when I actually started, and I kind of left this out, my parents raced up in Knoxville for 2 years in 2001 and 2002 with Ricky Logan in the Lucas Oil 3S. They would bring the tapes, and yes, I said tapes, back, and I would listen to them. And so I listened to Justin and Tony a lot. Well, when I found out that I was going to take over as the main announcer, I went back and referenced those tapes, and I would listen mainly to Tony because we were racing 410s. So my style initially was really kind of a ripoff of Tony Bachhoven. And when I started working with other announcers, Chris Steppen especially, that's where I really, really learned a lot, was sitting next to him and listening to how he would call a race and how he would put inflection at certain points and how he would change up how he does a lineup, how he calls a car. He doesn't just say a name. He may just use a number. He may use a sponsor and a number. He didn't say the same thing just over and over and over again. And that got me thinking, and even in talking to him, how many different ways can you say a driver's running the bottom? How many different ways can you call a slide job? There's more than one way of saying they're on the cushion. So Chris, I really owe a lot of credit to teaching me, because he would sit down and just talk with me. But my initial style was really very much like Tony. And that's where I got a lot of inspiration. And Tony, to this day, still is very much a teacher when I do get to work with him, whether it's at Knoxville or short track or, at the Chili Bowl. He was a mentor of mine before he really knew it. And now he's a mentor and really a great friend. And, and even Chris, now he's the manager down at Vado Speedway Park in Las Cruces. And I still, anytime I listen to him or work with him, I still learn a lot. So, I try to incorporate little bits, and every announcer does this, where you'll incorporate a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but you're not up there just flat stealing. But the one thing I will do is I'll throw in little quips and phrases as nods to the people who have taught me along the way. So the sit back, relax, and enjoy is actually a nod to Chris. When I do your battle is for the lead, that's a nod to Tony. And, it's without guys like them, there's no way I could do this, because they taught me so much without even meaning to.
Is it like when you guys kind of all get together, and I know like Chili Bowl is kind of one of those examples where there's like, kind of a bunch of you guys that call the action through the week. Do you guys actually like talk shop? Do you guys sit down and talk about announcing and, things that you do or don't do, or things you're trying to do better? Is that something that happens?
No, it's that's one thing we've never really done that. Mainly we're just making fun and, having fun and making fun of each other most of the time. That's one thing, especially you throw Blake Anderson in there, and that poor guy, we go after him relentlessly. But, Blake's a good punching bag. No, seriously, that's one of the fun things that I really, really enjoy about working with guys like Tony and Blake and Chris and Randy Ward and a lot of the guys I get to work with all over the country. We're there to have fun. We're there to do a job, but we're there to have fun. We all respect and understand why we're there. It's funny, during Chili Bowl, we're not fighting for who's going to announce. We're fighting to see, well, do you want to? No. Do you want to? No. Do you want to? There's the ego's not there. I'm not there to one up them. They're not there to one up me. And if that's what we're there for the wrong reasons. We're not the show. We're a part of the show. Like we've talked about, like if we're doing recording, like me and Tony have had conversations about, well, I'm wanting to record a commercial, and I showed him, well, this is what I use and this is how I do it and this and that. But as far as the actual announcing side of it, I don't think I've sat and really had a conversation with anybody about, well, how do you do this or how do you do that as far as your announcing?
I wanted to ask you about Chili Bowl specifically. Obviously that's probably one of the places people hear you a lot, I would assume, is the kind of specific challenges of calling races there. And with things being so small there, so tight, and action kind of switching out so often, like what are kind of unique challenges of calling the Chili Bowl versus calling, an ASCS race or, a sprint car race across the country?
There's so much going on, and there's so much information to decipher at any one time, and try not to get it crossed up in your head. The other thing too is it's so loud. Even with the mufflers, it's really hard to overdo it because you can't hear yourself. So that's one thing you have to kind of teach yourself, is you have to have a feel for where you're at and don't scream. One of the good things this year with Telstar Technologies, they actually redid the PA system a couple of years ago, and this year they got it set up where we're actually able to have headphones. We're not using headsets, just because with the headset, there's still way too much ambient that you pick up. So at least with the mic, you're able to point it directly at you and kind of mask some of that out. But with the headphones, this is one of the first years I've ever been able to actually hear what Tony or Randy have been saying, and it made it where we could co-call races. Where before, what me and Tony or Randy would do is we just do hand signals. So if Tony was done, he'd do this, or you'd see a dip on the mic, and that's how we knew to go ahead and take over. But now we were able to hear each other, so we could carry with the same battle instead of going from one end to the other, one end to the other. So that was really kind of neat, and that took out a lot of the challenge of, how do we work together without basically being able to hear each other at all.
What's the difficulties of Saturday? Like, I know races, start 8:30, and you're going to go late into the night with so many races to call through the day. I know you guys kind of do a rotation, but are there kind of unique challenges of calling that Saturday action?
Not really, because you're in that rotation. So, the only challenge that I run into is with the announcing. I'm also doing the website. I'm also doing social. I'm also taking notes. I'm getting ready for press and trying to, have information going there. But the challenge isn't really the chili bowl, it's the shootout, because you're going, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. or later every day. And, everybody talks about, oh man, chili bowl, 6 days, it's going to, no, 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 no. You can actually get a little bit of sleep during the chili bowl, during the shootout. When you're talking 1,100 entries and your biggest class is 330 cars, and that's just one of 5 classes that have over 300. It is absolutely just daunting. And it's funny, there's only 2 announcers at the shootout, but there's 4 at the chili bowl.
How much like prep time? I mean, like, I've talked to Johnny, I've talked to Blake, I've talked to Tony. I mean, I've talked to all these guys, and it's like they're keeping up with 100 drivers, a couple of hundred drivers. But how do you keep up with 1,100 drivers over a couple of days? I mean, are we talking weeks and weeks of work leading up into that?
The shootout's tough to do because a lot of these guys I will never see but once a year, on the micro side of it. So the local guys I kind of keep up with for the most part, just because of Port City and Now 600. Like Now 600, I do a lot of their press releases anyway with Terry Maddox. So a lot of those names and stats I'll kind of know going into it. And a lot of it, I'm looking it up as I'm going throughout the weekend because there is so many people. It's hard to sit down and figure out stats for 1,100 entries equating to 700 drivers. We're Chili Bowl, where we're doing the entries. I'm doing stats and figures as I'm getting the entries, so it makes it a little bit easier.
And then I've talked to these guys, and everybody has the spreadsheet. Do you have the spreadsheet?
I have a spreadsheet that I use. It's different from what Johnny or Tony or some of them use. The one that I have is actually I got from Chris, and it uses circular referencing where I can just punch in a number and bring up a driver. I'm not having to actually scroll down a printed sheet and find them.
And then how much time, I mean, like if you were to guess, how much time have you put into that spreadsheet over the years? Do you have any idea?
Oh my God, because I do a different spreadsheet for every single race. I'll take a spreadsheet and like all the national drivers I'll have in it, and I just copy them over, and I'll just update as I go. But like the regional drivers, I'll go around to every single car before the races, and I'll double check if I need to change a sponsor, if I need to move a sponsor, if they've got someone there. Like, example at the Hockett, Jordan Mallett, who races with us every week, one of his sponsors was there. So they had me move him further up in line to make sure that he got mentioned more. And then Jordan went out and had a career weekend. So it was really a good race for him. But I try to give the regional drivers just as much play as the national drivers, because I may only see them a couple times a year, 3-4 times, but they are just as important as anybody else that pulls in that pit area. So I really try to, make sure I take care of their sponsors and take care of them. But I get to the track. If I'm at the track later than noon on a race day, even if we don't start till 8, I've got anxiety. I'm in a panic because I'm thinking I got to get set up. I got to do banners. I've got all these other things I need to do before I can focus on trying to get more information on these drivers. And what's nice is throughout the years, a lot of times the regional guys, their sponsor information will stay the same, so you can just kind of copy it over. But I still want to make sure that I'm going around and asking them when they're pulling in, what do I need to say, or do I need to change anything? So as soon as that gate opens, I'll make, it feels like 100 laps around the pit area, just double checking.
One of my favorite things, I went to the Chili Bowl a couple of years ago and came up into the announcing stand with you. I kind of wanted to see what you guys' perspective was, but I took some photos of you guys announcing, and my favorite thing about you was like how animated you get. And like, I mean, you were standing up and moving around.
I was going to say you had to duck.
Oh my God, I loved it. It was so good. But like, is that something, do you realize you even do that? Or is it just like you just need to get up to keep that energy up?
I don't realize how much I move until somebody tells me. And I didn't realize how much I really moved until I got filmed one day. And Kent Nelson at Texas Motor Speedway, I knew I was doing a little bit of movement, but I didn't realize I was like making laps around the booth the way I was. He posted it to Twitter. And then Ross actually said it to, it's sung by Eminem. I think it was Till I Collapse. And it was funny, but I can't sit and call her. If I have to sit and call a race, I'm constantly doing this. I look at it as if I'm not enthusiastic about what I'm doing, if I'm not into that race, I'm doing a disservice. If I don't actually get into what I'm doing, then, because your excitement, just like when I talked about Alan earlier, the excitement that I have translates to the people that are listening. And I'm not just getting loud to be loud. It's, if there's an exciting race, I'm going to get amped up no matter what. I try not to scream, but at times I'm going to get loud and I'm going to talk faster than I should probably ever talk. I'm going to trip over my tongue. But when you're enjoying what you're doing, you can't help but get excited.
I wanted to ask you about the kind of unique experience we've had this year. Obviously, all of the COVID things going on, but that kind of early part of the season where we had all of the kind of iRacing stuff happening. And I know you called a bunch of those races. What was it like kind of trying to shift and be able to call a race from your house with just screens? Was it a big leap for you to be able to do that?
It was interesting because with the Lucas Oil Racing TV, we have a screen in front of us, and I am the world's worst at looking at that screen. I guarantee you, I can tell you right now, I am not a television broadcaster. Probably if that was my only option, just like in iRacing, I'll do it. And it taught me a little bit more to watch the screen. And I had some experience with it, but I was still terrible at it. But because that was my only option, was to watch the screen, it actually was kind of interesting because with the guys that were carrying the actual stream for us, if I said, hey, I want to look back through the field, they just start following me back through the field because I was able to read the ticker. So they would just start following me. And when I said, all right, we're going to go back and check on the leader, they could pop right back to it. So it was almost like I was quasi-directing what the action was, but they were great at following me. And it was actually a lot of fun because when you forgot that you were calling essentially a video game, it was just as exciting as calling real life. I really had a blast doing that. It was different. It was unique. It's not something that I necessarily would want to do again in the circumstances that we had to do it, but it was really a lot of fun. Now the circumstances around it sucked.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier about, cutting down trees and all of the other things. And if there's one thing that's always going to be the case when you work in dirt racing, you work for a track, you work for a series, you're always going to end up doing something well beyond what your kind of original job description was. And one of the things I always talk about, my time working for the Outlaws, we had a period where there was a problem with the roof in our building, and it was literally raining inside of our building. And I'm in the back with Tom Deary and Brian Carter and, Brian Dunlap and Ross, and we're literally like sweeping water out the back door. And I looked at Tom Deary and said, I don't ever want to hear that I didn't help you bail water. But what does that look like, for you? I know you do press releases, you do all of these things, but like on a weekly basis or on a racing weekend, what does a race day look like, and how many other things besides announcing are you doing?
So I'll typically try to get to a track between about 11 and noon. Try to be set up before noon, hooked into the PA, make sure that I'm not going to damage their system. Make sure I have all of my stuff laid out, and then I'll go down and I'll hang banners. And we don't hang banners to the extent of like what the Outlaws do, but we have they're 4x20 banners, and I'll put up about, 4, 5, 6 of those and make sure that they're in the grandstand side where the fans can see them, where our broadcast can see them. Get all that done, and then go down. If I need to help park, I'll help park. Make sure if our competition director and his wife need anything, if Matt and Ashley need something, try to help them out, help get the trailer set up, help get all the draw stuff set up, get television hooked up, get our laptops hooked up, make sure that the lineup, we can get to it, make sure that my race pass is translating back and forth. And then once I start making laps, it's, from there, I'm able to focus more on what I'm actually doing. But leading up to that, If I need to help Ashley run a new loop, that's part of it. And a lot of times, by the time we figure out, we'll test the loop and it's fine. And then once we get going, figure out that there's a problem, by that point, it's too late to go down and try to dig something up. But usually, like a couple times, we carry the cable that actually runs from the tower down to where you hook into the loop. And we've had to run a brand new one of those a couple times. So when the support class is running, we'll run that and haul butt under the stands and try to get all that fixed. So it's whatever they need me to do. If I'm capable, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
When you kind of in kind of talking about all the things that you're doing, the thing that always worries me about you is that you never sleep. And in kind of jamming back and forth about doing the show, you mentioned how you never sleep, but the press release stuff you do, and I feel like you talking about being a publicist, I would guess to most that would seem like you're a publicist for the series, but you end up doing like releases for drivers and like multiple series and all these different things. Is that something that's part of your job there, or are you doing extra work for people outside of that? Like, how does that all kind of work together?
I have a couple drivers that I do PR for them to make a little extra money, like Sam Haferty, Harley White. If Blake Hahn wants a press release done, and I'll go ahead and do one for him. I've had car owners call up if they've got a driver coming in. A couple times out in Pennsylvania, we're like, hey, could you give our driver some scratch and let people know he's coming? Yeah, sure, not a problem. But any given weekend, I could have anywhere from 1 to 5 different parts of our series running. So, the national tour stuff, of course, I'm there, I'm live, and I can write a lot more detailed press release. With the regional stuff, before my race pass really got to where it is today, I would have to wait until that race was done. Then they would send me, either call me and read off everybody that was there. And I would, in turn, when I was done with that, go enter everything and then write the press release. Or they would send me pictures of the draw sheet, and then they would send me pictures of the lineups and the finishes. When we started doing that, that really sped up the process. Now it's to where a lot of times, like the Warrior region, Sooner region, our desert and Southwest regions, they're able to put in everything on their own. And then what they do is they send me the pictures throughout the night, and I can go in and double check it and make sure that, they didn't transpose a number, because, hell, to be human, it will happen. Hell, I've done it. I did it Saturday. Transposed a couple of drivers in the A, and they caught it. So and it was before the press release went out. So we just went ahead and corrected it real quick. And that's made it to where instead of getting to bed as the sun comes up, I'm at least able to get to bed between, like 3 and 4:30 in the morning. But and it doesn't sound like much, but it really does help in the grand scheme of things. So most weekends on a Friday night, I'll probably be in bed by about 2:30. On a Saturday night, depending on what we have going, I might be in bed by about 3:30, 4 o'clock.
You mentioned My Race Pass. My literally last guest on the show was Josh Holt from My Race Pass, and I'm curious, after talking to him, what does that software kind of do from your perspective, and how much does it help to be able to have that technology kind of across the different series that you work with?
It's interesting. I don't know if Josh actually brought it up. We were the first series to ever utilize the My Race Pass platform back when it was called Driver Websites, and we have been the guinea pigs on a lot of what it does today and a lot of the functions that we're able to do. I can tell you how easy that system is to use. As they're coming across the line, I'm doing 10 key on the laptop, and I'm putting their finishes into the website. So the heat races I get without a problem. B mains, I'll usually get about the top 10, and then go to timing and scoring. Same thing with the A main. And if I don't get them, as I'm doing the next lineup, I can still get everything entered and posted. That's how easy that system is to use. And the way we've worked with them, and they've started to work with other series, and the ideas and everything, we're able to bounce off each other. It is amazing how fast and how simple that system is to use now, and how quickly we're able to get information out. And, I had this discussion with Bill Wright up in Knoxville this year, where, I still remember waiting for the speed sport to show up. Where now, if we don't have results posted 3 minutes after the race, we're getting bombarded. Well, who won? Well, where's the results? And at that point, I've had to run down, do the interview with the winner, and come back up and finish entering the stuff. And I'm laughing, going, It's all right. You'll get it. Don't worry. But what's made it really nice is during national events, I'm able to keep on the front side of the website an actual running updated blog on our news feed. Because once I get the results in, I click a button and it says media format, and it brings up the finish already in format, ready to go. I just copy, paste, done. And I'm able to keep that running on the home side of the website. So whenever I'm done at the end of the night, I don't have to retype the results. I can copy, paste, make any corrections. If I had to change a finish somewhere because I either transposed a number or somebody got disqualified, it takes me seconds instead of hours now.
I think that's one of the things, and it's something that I worked a lot on, when I was with the Outlaws, is trying to find ways to make things easier, make things quicker, because I think a lot of people don't realize that, with a lot of these series, there's one person, maybe two people that are kind of doing these jobs, and it's like as simple as you can make things and as quick as you can make things go. That's really, really important, because when they're freed up to do other stuff, then they're going to put out better content through the night. And somebody like yourself who's doing announcing and, writing releases and doing all of these things, like it's really important to be able to fire those things out as quickly as you can. I mean, even at Chili Bowl, I have no idea how you even keep up with a Chili Bowl Twitter account through the day. It's insane how much stuff comes out.
The good thing about that is because I do have Tony, Randy, and Anderson there. I forgot his first name for a second. Blake. Yeah, that guy. The all-star.
That other guy. Yeah.
It makes it a lot easier to where I'm able to do more updates, and I'm able to focus a little bit more on that side. And that's something that I really wish I could do more, because that's one thing that the Outlaws really do well is on Twitter is getting updates out. But when I'm trying to call a race and do that, it does make it a little challenging. So, as I go forward, I'm trying to find different ways of making it better. Before, when you could integrate Facebook into Twitter, you could just post to Facebook and it would cross over and it would give a link to whatever so people could go click on it. Now I use a program, it's Hootsuite, I think is what I actually use now, to where it'll post to both platforms. So I'm only having to do it one time. I'm not having to post, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And then also with my race pass, you can go on the back side of the website and you can actually get the result reports. So I'm able to screenshot that from my phone and post that to where you have the entire rundown in one shot, instead of having to search through a bunch of tweets to find heat 1, heat 2, heat 3. Now it's one image.
Yep.
And, even during the shootout and Chili Bowl, I'll do that from the computer just because we don't have enough cell service in the building. So I'm able to do that and get all that posted. So you're not just constantly going copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. It's just one shot.
For those that don't know, and I can't say that I am super educated myself on this, I know obviously about the Lucas Oil ASCS National Tour and all of the regional tours, but how do those things kind of all fit together? How many regional tours are there, and how does that kind of all work as one kind of bigger organization?
So you have the national tour, and obviously that's the top level, and that's where the $250,000 point fund and everything is there. And the regional tours help stabilize racing in a region, and it provides a decent point fund for drivers to run for, and a set of rules that is uniform across the board. It's the same engine rules for everybody. It's the same format for everybody. When you go from one region to another, you're not having to ask questions of what format are we running today. When you go from the Southwest region to the Lone Star region to the Sooner region, it's all the same format. It's a uniform set. The only difference now is in our non-wing divisions. We started bringing that in the last couple of years. And with the non-wing, there were already set tours. So we said, okay, run your program. We will do PR for you. We will help you. We will do press releases. We'll manage all your points. We'll provide a point fund for you. If you want to time. If you want to run our format, but just run our right rear. So that's where, like the Elite Series, Nathan has built an incredible non-wing series down there, and he's been a lot of fun to work with. And, they're averaging easily 25, 26 cars a night, and really have had some great racing down there. So that's the only side where it is a little different, but in the end, they all still run our format. It's just with them, if you want to run a 377 or a 410, that's fine. But on the wing side of it, it has to be the ASCS Brodex head. So the regions ultimately feed into the national tour. You look at our national tour right now. That's where Garrett Williamson came from. That's where Travis Reed in those regional tours and they're able to move up and progress. That shot.
So, kind of taking a break a little bit from kind of some of this other conversation, kind of jumping over to some racing this year. Give me your kind of overall impressions of the ASCS National Tour season to this point. Hafer-Teeb leading the points. What are some things that have stood out to you this season?
At the start of the season, Sam was going to, focus more on his 410 program, and he was going to run the All-Stars. And, once everything kind of fell apart with COVID and all the seasons went up in the air, it kind of turned into a weird deal. And he started, kind of came back over to the ASCS side. And I know ultimately he wants to go back and focus on his 410 program. But, I mean, Sam is Sam. And if you want to beat somebody in the 360 side right now, he's the one to beat. And he proved that over the weekend at the Hocket where, Mark Smith dominated the first two nights, but Sam was there on the last night. He's just as tough as ever. And, if anybody wants to say, well, it's because he has better funding or has better this or better that, when Sam was winning championships with us before, he had no funding, and it was all what he could bring in. So, I mean, Sam is an incredible talent behind the wheel, and Roger has really started to put a couple of solid finishes together, and he's giving chase right now. And you talk about from one season to the other, where you can really be riding a high to a low. I mean, that's been Blake this year, where last year, this time of year it's like he could do no wrong, and he didn't even make the show at the Hocket. He had to take a provisional. So. It's the guys that seem like they were, really, really struggling last year have kind of come out of that funk, and they've really had a decent year. And the guys that, with the exception of Sam, that really had a good year last year, have kind of struggled this year. But, we've got a great group of drivers. We've got a really strong rookie class. Dylan Westbrook coming out this year. He has 4 track championships at Oswego Speedway, and he's had some great runs. Leads the rookie title race right now. Chase Randall at 15, almost 16, came out of the micro ranks. Great car control, has had some really solid runs this year. And like anybody his age, he's tripped a little bit and he's made some mistakes, but he's bounced back, and he's done really well. He hasn't let it, affect him, but he's also learned from it. So, overall, yeah, we may not have had all the races that we wanted because of everything that's happened, but we still had 15 shows and 10 different winners. So there's still a lot of, trying to find the right word, a lot of variation. You really still don't know who's going to win going into any given night, and that's one of the neat things about ASCS is I kind of refer to it as the blue collar national tour, because you can still have that job and still run the national tour. And, I understand we're not going to have 90 races a year like the World of Outlaws, but we're not set up to have 90 races a year. And most of our guys aren't set up for that. Most of our teams are set up to have about a 55, 60 race schedule. And that's really about it. So, but you look at the guys that moved on to the Outlaws and were successful with the Outlaws. They got their start with us, whether it was Shane or Darren or Jason Sides, Jason Johnson. This is where they got their start. So running this, if you want to be successful and learn how to race on the road and learn how to be consistent, this is where you start, and it teaches you so you can move on to bigger things.
I wanted to ask you, you guys had your first female driver win a national tour event this year in Harley White. I wanted to ask you about that race and kind of what you think that means for the future.
It's interesting because I also do the PR for Harley. I started doing that this year. And she is an incredibly, incredibly talented driver. And I don't look at her as a female driver. She is a competitor. She's another driver on the racetrack. But for her to come out and win that race the way she did, because she went in about the second or third lap and almost dumped it. Recovered, ran Derek Hagar down at Riverside, which him and Tim Crawley are king there, and got by him and held him off through about 5 dive bomb slide jobs and didn't let him get in her head. That really speaks volumes to how talented and how focused she is as a driver. And then to have Johnny Herrera as her crew chief, to be able to get her where she is now and help get that confidence in her and get that program where it needs to be, it really meant the world. I know for the series and for her to get that gorilla off her back and prove, yes, I can win at this level. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to stand there and say, well, she's a woman and she this, and nobody gets special treatment. If you want to compete out here, you have to have broad shoulders and be ready to compete. But for her to win as a woman and at this level, I mean, really speaks volumes. It really does.
Do you get a chance to really watch that much other racing outside of the things that you're covering? I mean, do you get a chance to watch the Outlaws, the All-Stars, maybe some late model modified action?
When I get to, and I enjoy getting to watch other things because, yeah, I'm a sprint car fan. I love it all. If it goes undone, I want to watch it. I don't care if it's a lawnmower race. I'm one of those rare sprint car fans that really does enjoy modifieds. In fact, I've worked with Joe Duvall this year, and he does his three-day USRA tour through Oklahoma, and I went and called those shows and just had an absolute blast. So, I'll go out to Creek County when I get a chance, and sometimes you just need to watch a good old-fashioned Saturday night stock car race because, one, it's good racing, and two, it's pretty good comedy.
When you've gotten opportunities to go do other things, go call other races, things like that, is the preparation any different, when you're just going to go show up and maybe call one of those races for Joe? Or do you have to kind of maybe do some extra work to get yourself ready for those?
I mean, there's a little extra work just because, I hadn't really called a modified race since 2000. I've called a couple, but they've been random. But like to sit down and focus on calling a modified race, I haven't done that since 2011. So, for people that follow modifieds, when I was still calling them weekly, the chassis to have was still a D&M. And that chassis doesn't even exist anymore. Now everybody's got an MB2 custom. So it was interesting to go through and get the information on some of these drivers and get their sponsor info and kind of get some background, because the stuff that I knew from back then where, GRT was really coming in where I was at and people ran dirt works and Bill's Builds and D&Ms. Now it's MB2 Customs and a Shaw by this and a Phillips by that. And, it was kind of a culture shock for a minute going, man, everything I knew about modifieds is kind of out the window. It's almost like calling a late model race anymore.
When was the last time you actually got to go to a race as a fan?
Ooh. Oh, God, you're making me think now. Off the top of my head, I really couldn't tell you. Even when I'm sitting in the stands, I can't do it. I've been on this side of the sport for so long. I either have to live tweet, I have to update, I have to do something, or I have to be working on a car, or I have to be scraping mud. I started off in the pits working on cars, and then transitioned over to this side of it. So I know we had a rain out a few years ago. We were supposed to be in Indiana and Michigan, and the only race we got in was Michigan. And we all hauled butt to Knoxville, and I was actually a crew member with Wayne Johnson that night. And, that was fun. I love going back and doing that stuff. But to sit down and actually be a fan at a race, I couldn't tell you the last time I did it.
You probably couldn't do it even if you wanted to.
No, I'll sit there. I'll just fidget the whole time.
Yeah. I'll let you go. You've actually given me a ton of time today, so I certainly appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, but what's your schedule look like going forward? And do you get an off season? We always say that's such a misnomer in our sport, but do you get any time off here upcoming?
Oh, no. We've actually, of course, with, again, with everything that's going on with COVID, we were supposed to be at TMS, and, with all the restrictions that are still in place, as you well know in NASCAR and what's going on, it's, they're focusing on the Cup race, which, it is what it is. And it's a bummer because I really love going to that track, and, Eddie and Ken and everybody there are so wonderful to work with. So we really look forward to going back next year. And so we just got short track nationals here, the 2nd and 3rd, and then we followed that up. We'll end the season for the national tour down at Devil's Bowl with the Winter Nationals. And then, after that, it's full on into Shootout and Chili Bowl. So off season need not apply.
Yeah. Before I go, I saw your tweet today about Short Track Nationals. Give me the Short Track Nationals elevator pitch. Why should people go check that event out?
If you've never been to the Short Track Nationals, you go to these marquee events around the country, and a lot of them are run on 3/8 and 1/2 miles. If you've never seen an event like this on a quarter mile high bank track like I-30, you are truly missing out. You're talking a foot tall curve, 80 plus sprint cars, and 2 nights where it is truly anybody's race to win. It's 33 years going on now, and it definitely needs to be on your bucket list. 10,041 to win, and it'll draw drivers from all over the country, and you will have surprise winners in that one. So, of course, I feel like if you've never been to I-30, you just haven't really been to a good old fashioned dirt track.
Definitely. Well, Bryan Hulbert, I certainly appreciate you taking some time today and giving me some insight into your world and talking some racing. But thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.